Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The values that Americans say define the national character are changing as younger generations rate patriotism, religion, and having children as less important to them than did young people 2 decades ago, according to a new Wall Street Journal NBC News survey. So yes, we'll be referencing the Wall Street Journal today, and we'll be looking at a host of different views and how Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, and the silent generation all vary on the level of importance given to these areas. So we're looking at patriotism, religion, having children, hard work, community involvement, and tolerance for others. But why do you care about any of that? And if the generations are different, it's pretty straightforward, really. As Gen Z and the millennials become the bulk of the deciding force in American lives, so too will their priorities shape what we focus on as a nation, what issues are addressed, and even things like who becomes president of these United States. So we're going to begin this conversation, break it down one by one, but of course we couldn't get started without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Always excited, but very excited about today's article and topic. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, so we'll start, Lance, with patriotism. Good one to come out of the gate with. So the Wall Street Journal and NBC News did a survey 21 years ago asking Americans to say which values were most important to them. So what we're looking at is that data relevant to a survey they just conducted of millennials and Gen Z. Okay, so same questions, same survey, given at relative time. So we can't do that whole, well, as you get old, X, Y. No, we're comparing when Lance was young, long ago in a galaxy far, far away, to the young people of today, the young adults, and those going on middle age. So that's to give some context for how we're looking at this data. So starting out with patriotism, the way this works is these are values that are considered very important by generation. So the percentage I'm giving you is the percentage of that generation that said this value is very important to them. Almost 80% of those people ages 55 to 91 years old today, almost 80% said that patriotism was very important to them. By contrast, Gen Z and millennials, only about 42% approximately. Those are people ages 18 to 38 right now. In fact, that would also count people under the age of 18, but the Wall Street Journal did not poll people under the age of 18. So that's why you have those two pushed together. So that may not actually be the case for all of Gen Z, but just to be clear, ages 18 to 38. So what do you think accounts for this, Lance? I mean, why almost having, right, the amount of people in a generation that say it's important?
Well, I think the political climate in the last 20 years has changed dramatically. And I think that's what causes it, and again, I will say this coming from my redneck liberal days, I'm sure patriotism to me might even mean something different than it does to you or to Caleb. Patriotism to me isn't just what?
Don't share it yet because we don't want to, we don't want to influence Caleb's view on this.
Oh, okay.
So why don't we want to start with him?
Well, that's fine. I didn't know
what patriotism means.
I'm just saying, I was just going to say what patriotism means to me, and I don't think it would fit what most people would think of as patriotism.
Okay.
Because I do think that patriotism is important, but I think it's important for reasons. I have a different view on patriotism than I think most of the people who would say patriotism is important to them.
Okay.
So however you want to take it from there, boss.
Fair. So, but do you think what accounts for that generational gap? I understand what would account for your gap.
Well, I think when most people, and again, this is total assumption, when they hear the word patriotism, they're talking, and it's even mentioned in the article, this 31-year-old young lady mentions it as blind following of your country, blah, 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 blah. Well, see, that's not how I define patriotism.
She says, quote, "Patriotism for the sake of patriotism means nothing to me. If you believe in the values that your country is expressing and following and you want to support those, then sure. But just as a blind association with whatever you happen to be, with wherever you happen to be from, that just doesn't seem logical."
And see, I agree with her in one hand, but I'm still patriotic because this country, even if we're going the wrong direction, in my opinion, is still better than any place else because we have the right to argue, debate the topics in what direction we're going to go. And so I'm very patriotic about the good of this country. I may not like the direction that it goes. I may not agree with the decisions that are being made, but I am so glad I live here instead of any place else. So just because I'm patriotic, I don't blindly follow the direction of the country. And her being from, which one was that 31-year-old group?
Yeah.
Gen Z millennials?
Yeah. She's a millennial.
Okay.
She's right around the age of your daughter.
I disagree. Right.
One of your daughters.
I'm very patriotic, but not in the sense that she defined patriotic.
Right.
Does that make sense? So, I mean, I think that's my explanation as to why the numbers for boomers are so much more is because we live, one, at a different time when patriotism was very important until Watergate and Nixon. And that's when, in Vietnam War. So, it depends on where you are. But most of us were raised at a time when patriotism was a big deal. And those things made us waver, but we're still patriotic. But we're not patriotic in the sense that maybe the millennials are looking at it, and that is you just blindly follow your country. I don't think a lot of people my age, in their 50s and 60s are patriotic blindly. We're patriotic.
That would be interesting.
You know what I'm saying,
to
though?
Poll on, though,
right? But that's what I'm saying. She's saying you just don't blindly follow. I don't blindly follow anybody or anything. But I consider myself patriotic.
Sure. Patriotism means different things depending on who you ask. So, Caleb.
Yavo.
Wait, one more time. What was that?
Yavo.
Oh, okay.
Have you not seen Hogan's Heroes?
No, I thought it just sounded to me
but I didn't know you were a German socialist.
Nonsense. Oh, no. What you just said.
I grew up watching that show and I liked that show. We loved Schultz.
I still watch it every Monday through Friday night at 10 o'clock.
I didn't know it was still on. Doing the reruns.
Yeah,
I used to watch them when we were younger.
TV, but if you need them, I've got like 4 seasons worth on DVD.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So you can
we just started News Radio, which is a little older or a little younger than that, but
you just completely threw me off when you said that because I didn't hear any fidelity in what you were saying at all. So it was just garbled nonsense, and it was like, okay,
well, that's usually what he sounds like.
Well,
no matter what he says.
Where's the drum roll? It was more garbled and nonsensical than it.
I mean, I'm hitting him when he's down because he started school, so his brain is numb anyway right now because he's been in school.
Football broadcasting to get to on Friday that I'm trying to figure out too. My goodness.
Do you consider yourself patriotic?
Yes.
And what does that, if you were going to explain to somebody, I'm patriotic, and they said, well, what does that mean? What would you say?
I'm a strong supporter of my country, is what I think patriotic means.
What if your country's doing something you don't believe in, that you think is wrong?
So you're currently a strong supporter?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No, but patriotism should preclude politics or not? Would you be as patriotic if the country was doing something you didn't agree with or like?
Would you, another way, Caleb, maybe to answer it is, if instead of Donald Trump right now, if Hillary Clinton was president of the United States, would you still describe yourself as patriotic as you are right now?
Maybe not as, but I wouldn't say I'm not a patriot. I was a patriot when Obama was in office because it's still,
you're saying you're a patriot.
No matter whether Obama's in office or Trump's in office or Clinton's in office or your boy Buttigieg is in office, doesn't matter. America, it's still America. It's still your country. You live here.
Okay.
You reap the benefits of being born in this country and being a citizen of this country.
So you see patriotism as transcending politics, in other words, is what you're saying.
If I don't agree with a coach, if the Cavs hire a coach and I don't like him, I'm still a Cavs fan.
See, this is interesting, Lance, because there's a lot of ways that I think when asked the same question, right, you could have two people like you and Caleb answer it and say they're patriotic, but it means different things. And for example, Lance may strongly disagree with something going on in his country, but his strong disagreement and his discussion of that disagreement might be something that he even sees as patriotism, where what Caleb is describing is more of a altruistic, patriotism is it's more gray than that. I guess it's more about the country, generally speaking, not about any particular issue itself or where I don't know. That's part of why this is elusive is
right. But this all started because that's my answer as to your question as to why are the boomers numbers so much higher than Gen Z and millennial.
Right.
That's my reasoning. That's my rationale is that they see patriotism as a very narrow belief system. And most of them don't have a narrow belief system. I'm not speaking for Kayla. I'm just saying overall, they have a very narrow belief system because it's based on their experiences in life because they haven't lived very long. Whereas boomers, we can say patriotism and you talk to 10 different boomers, it means 10 different things.
Right.
It's
so that's why our numbers are
really
higher. Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's more subjective for boomers than it is for the younger generations, which is why the younger generations poll at a lower rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my answer. I'm not saying I'm right, but you asked me that question. That's my answer to the question.
For better or worse, too, I'd probably also throw in there just for people to consider that nationalism is often viewed as a perversion.
That's not patriotism. Okay.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm getting to.
It's a
I think
perversion, yes.
they get associated. I'm not saying they're used interchangeably because I don't think
our current president
correct.
does.
Our
current president does.
Well, but that's not what my point is, though. The fact that they get used that way by our president, by the news media, by the fact that they're frequently mentioned within the same sentence, by association has caused what I think is an aversion to those by younger generations because they overwhelmingly see nationalism as a bad thing. Okay. Again, that's a different conversation. But the point is because the news media regularly and because the nationalism movement, the group of people who believe in nationalism don't necessarily often self-identify as nationalists. They identify as patriotic and as patriots. There is unfortunately what's happening is it's being associated with this thing that it's really not. In other words, patriotism is inadvertently becoming more associated with this extreme, we love America and it's about keeping America white and keeping America, very specific to what it's quote unquote always been. And so that leaves a bad taste because when you look at these other polling indicators that we're going to talk about here, you'll see why if you perceived patriotism to be similar to nationalism, it would be very problematic for younger people who don't like a lack of tolerance for others.
Well,
it doesn't make it right.
Generally.
I agree with that. But being an adolescent when the Vietnam War ended, I wasn't a teenager. Okay. So, I don't want to get misconceptions.
Yeah.
But there was a phrase back then by the quote, patriotic World War II baby boomers, which for some reason now I've been put into their group, which I don't think I really am, but numbers wise I am.
That's where you are.
They say, they would say, America, love it or leave it.
Uh-huh.
And my response as an adolescent and a teenager is, no, I love America because I can criticize it. Just because I'm criticizing what our country is doing or I don't believe in what our leadership is doing doesn't mean I don't love America. And I see that as a very strong parallel to what's going on now. If I disagree with the president wants me to go back where I came from. Unfortunately, I came from Missouri, so I'm still going to be here complaining. And that's basically what you're saying. But I'm saying there's a historic. So that's where I'm kind of disagreeing with you.
Okay.
Because I grew up at a time when I was told, this is America, love it or leave it. It's like, no, I love America. That's why I'm not leaving, but that's why I'm speaking out against the direction our country is going at the time.
Well, I think that's what has to be pushed if we ever expect young people to view patriotism as important again. Because I think when you listen to some of these other indicators, And when you look at full polling on young people, and when I say young people, keep in mind, we're talking about people ages 38 and down. So not that young, it depends on, it's just like saying a 38-year-old today is not going to have the same views on average as an 18-year-old. They're just not. An 18-year-old wasn't alive for 9/11. A 38-year-old was alive and well and can fully remember and it's just examples of things like that are going to greatly change people's perspectives. Even people who are just 10 years apart or 7 years apart, like me and one of Lance's daughters, even then, there's a lot of things we have in common, but there's also things that happen that because of the age difference, we just don't associate. We don't both share that. So I think the key there is reminding people that patriotism, again, and everybody defines it differently, but that's exactly the point of it, is it's about your pride is maybe not the right word, but your support of your country and its foundational values. Okay. So that doesn't mean in the moment, right? In other words, you can be objecting to something and that can be patriotic because you see it as going against a foundational principle of what you see as America, which again is going to be different for everybody. So the next thing, religion. This is a big one.
Religion, belief in God. Because to me, that's huge.
Right. According to the graph. And we'll let our listeners know this. Remember, we've got the article linked at thestateofus.org. So please check it out because this is very relevant. In the wording, Lance, and you tell me if you find it someplace else that's different, but the only way I found it listed in the article, the written portion, is saying religion. It never mentions belief in God.
Gotcha.
The chart then says religion, belief in God. My perception here is probably what happened is the written version is correct and the person making the chart just kind of added that, thinking that it helped clarify, when in reality those are different things, or at least I think they should be polled differently. So we'll probably defer to, if you're okay with it, we'll just defer to what's written as opposed to the I know you're shocked. I'm deferring to the written word instead of the chart. I
appreciate that. No.
That's what we'll defer to. So the big change here, and we'll let this sit with you for a second. When you look at boomers and the silent generation, so ages 55 to 91, about 68% said that religion was very important. Okay. Very important to them. Where by contrast, only about 30% of Gen Z and millennials say the same. So big difference there. Big difference. What does that mean, though? Why has that happened? Well, you'll have to stick around to find out. As we mentioned, thestateofus.org, you can check out this article for yourself. You can look at the graph, read the text, and get the info there. But before we continue and talk about why this change in religion has occurred, Lance, it's important we take a moment and remind people, what are we trying to do here on The State of Us?
TrueChat's mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversation.
And if you don't think we're doing that, well, there's lots of resources on the website. Makes it easy for you to reach out and let us know, and we'll certainly look into it. And we're going to keep looking at old and young and how they diverge on different values. But before we do that, we're going to take a brief moment to hear from one of our sponsors. Welcome back. Boomers and the silent generation, ages 55 to 91, about 68% say that religion is very important. Very important. Where by contrast, Gen Z and millennials, ages 18 to 38, that was the ages polled, said that religion is only about 30%. Only 30% of them said it was very important. So again, more than half, more than 50% shift here in these generations. My analysis, we'll see what Caleb and Lance think, to this one's pretty straightforward. This goes kind of hand in hand. It's not, I wouldn't say directly related to patriotism, but I think it goes back to this idea of millennials and Gen Z grew up in a world where there was a very particular idea of an American dream that was sold to them and what that looked like. And that dream was often achieved by white Americans, for example, typically straight Americans, and typically men were leading that category in the success. In other words, women were part of it, but they were part of it in the household and so forth. So that very vision that they were sold as millennials came of age in an economic depression, and that's where many of them started their working careers in the worst recession since the Great Depression, they have found that that's not achievable. So they felt that this whole promise around this very specific vision of an American life was all a farce. And of course, part of what was sold to them is that you go to church on Sundays, right? And you sit down, and if you're a good, God-fearing Christian and you're white, you hopefully will be able to afford a house in the suburbs with a nice car, and have 2 kids. And that is this, again, when you look at a lot of this stuff, Lance, that we're talking about, right? We've got hard work, community involvement, religion, children, and patriotism. These all kind of center around this thing that millennials were sold, that then when they grew up, they all of a sudden realized, no, we can't have that, or it's not nearly as achievable as it used to be. So I would attribute a large part of that to this. I would also attribute the religion specifically to having left a bad taste in millennials' mouth, because they've seen and they've grown up with extreme versions of religion being used to justify horrible things. And they've witnessed it, this goes back to that kind of nationalism being a perversion of patriotism. And also witnessing religion being very slow to include others. They see it as rather hypocritical, more traditional practicing religion. And again, the problem here is that you lump it all in, just like you lump patriotism in, where it doesn't necessarily belong with nationalism, but it gets thrown in there. And when you have a generation that looks at it that way, then there's these bad associations. So I'd say that's a big part of it. The hypocrisy that they see rampant in religion, and then also the idea that this was part of a dream they were sold, that they realized, being in the workforce now, basically all millennials, that just not achievable the way it was for their parents and the generations before them. Lance?
I really can't comment because I apologize, but I just was really looking at this chart very closely because I didn't get it ahead of the show. I'm a Generation X person. They totally screwed up these generation things. When I went
not by age, you're
not. No, because here's where my history comes in.
No.
Okay. When I went to college, I was taught that 1960 was the end of the baby boomer generation.
I know.
Okay.
I know you were.
Well, I'm just looking at this chart. I align with Generation X numbers.
I understand.
I do not align with the boomer numbers.
Okay.
So you've got me representing
I know,
boomers.
you're on that cusp.
And some sociologist rewrote it and did revisionist history.
Well, the United
and
States
moved it up to 1964.
Census Bureau did.
Okay, they classify people.
Yeah,
the Census Bureau just collects numbers.
Well, yeah, but they give the age ranges that they break it down by, and then the other people give them labels. And I don't know why they'd have to explain. I think this was all an attempt to unify the duration of each generation.
Well, that's silly, because if we were not part of the generation in 1960, why make us part of the generation in 75?
It had to be unified at some point.
Yeah, well,
the time spans had to be unified.
I'm just telling you, I'm not a boomer. I'm a Generation X.
I know, but you are. Anyway, so what do you think? What's to attribute here to the religion change? Do you agree with my analysis?
Honestly, I was sitting here pissed off
Caleb.
that I was a Generation X person. So I really wasn't listening to you. I'm sorry, boss, but as a Generation X person, I can give you an answer. Not as a boomer, but as a Generation X person, I can answer your question because I'm closer to the Generation Z and millennials than the baby boomers are.
Now you've done it. You ticked them off.
Well, it's not me. He just focused on other stuff. He just now we know he just sleeps when I speak, or he's doodling.
I wasn't sleeping,
or something.
I wasn't sleeping. I was really into this. Look. I even was doing the math.
He's even got a doodle.
No, I was figuring out the math that I'm a Generation X. I am not a boomer. And my thoughts go with Generation X according to this chart.
Well, your thoughts can go with it, but you are a
official.
You are
I'm
a boomer.
a Gen X. No, I am Gen X.
Look,
in my belief system.
Classic boomer denying there.
I would have been a Gen X if we did this show in 1970. But sometime after 1970, they upped the date from 60 to 64 and include me.
They realized they had
boomer.
made a mistake.
No, they didn't make a mistake.
And they had to pull you in.
You ever heard the expression pouring fuel on a fire?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
So, Caleb, would you
I think
say
old
that
people, yes, I think old people feel like you, but I don't feel that way because I'm a Generation X person.
you just want to be younger than you are?
No, it has nothing to do with age. It has
everything to do.
No, it doesn't, because
where you fall.
No, it doesn't, because it should have to do with the events in history that you partook in.
I know, but
because
then you
that's
could
what
never.
that's what forms your belief system. I'm really tying this into the show, dude.
I believe you.
I really am. Okay,
I believe.
Because the events that you live through in life is what helps form your belief system, along with because family, everything else. Okay, family is more important. So things based on family are going to be big for people that are older, because we didn't have divorce. We didn't have breakups of the family. To the numbers that we did. Everybody looks at the 70s. That's when I remember hearing about open marriage and all this kind of stuff. Women got equality so they could go out. Women didn't have to marry for money.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm reading a book about.
Well, that ties into our next one.
But I'm reading a book now about when women, you're talking to older women, and it was like, well, I had to get married because he was making money and I was one of 11 children. And my life stunk. So getting married to somebody because I didn't love them because they had money, I thought my life would be better. Okay. My daughters don't have to make that decision now. They can make enough money to live on their own, and they can choose a partner based on other things than economic independence.
Well, we hope that's the case.
Well, I know my two daughters are.
Right. But are they?
They're making that decision based on
Yeah.
their feelings and emotions and other things, not on the fact that they need a partner to be successful in life.
Well, so the next two things, having children and hard work. Part of why I put these together is I chalk them up again to this idea of an American dream that was sold to a generation that realized it wasn't achievable the way that it had been sold in the past.
See, look at hard work. Who's the group that thinks hard work is the most important?
Gen X.
And what am I all about?
Hard work.
What am I all about, right? Hard work. So I believe in hard work more than the boomers do. That's why I'm a Generation X person.
Okay.
I teach that
You
all the time.
You identify, but by the same
because
token,
I was, and then they changed the rules after I was already grown up.
I hear you. After I became a big boy, they changed the rules and the whole system. So having children went from, with the boomers and the silent generation, ages 55 to 91, it went from about 54% as saying the percentage of the generation that said it was very important to have children, down to about 32% for Gen Z and millennials. Now, this one I don't chalk up to them not necessarily wanting children as much as it is they look at and saying, I struggle to provide a good life for myself. How am I realistically going to provide a good life for my kids?
And bigger families.
Yeah.
With the boomers, most of the old boomers, the real boomers, had bigger families. I came from a family of 4. But then that's why I'm in the middle there, see, because then I realized, okay, and I studied some things and I didn't want 3. So then it was either 2 or 4.
How important, Caleb, is having children to you? Would you put it, if you have everything from very important to very unimportant, so you've got important, very important, middle of the road, it's neither important nor not important.
But everything can be rated very important or not important at all.
Right.
You don't have to put one in each category. You can put them all in one category if you wanted to.
So where is having children not very important, not important, neither important, or very important?
And this is still a futuristic question, correct?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This isn't something we've already.
Assuming you're asking me if I have kids now? No,
right.
I don't.
That's exactly what I meant
no,
by that. Okay.
No,
that was a coded version of that question.
Okay. Yeah. That would be, that would be for listeners to know. Obviously, if he had kids, that might skew his,
no, I don't.
his answer.
So you're doing this like 16 personalities style.
I'm asking you, right. You, where are you at on our range here?
Important.
Okay. So not very important, just important. Okay, well, see, then you're not in that 30% saying it's very important. So, and again, this makes sense to me in the standpoint too. I think there's been a lot of sale, Lance, less focus on the family, more on how successful, quote unquote, successful you can be, and that building a family for various reasons is no longer seen as I don't think, a critical part of being classified in society as successful. It has more to do with how far you've climbed, how much money you make, these types. And that's not, again, we can debate if that's good or not, but
that's also a sign of being selfish and into yourself.
But wait.
I know you're going to throw the other one in there. Okay, yeah.
Don't you worry.
I'm just throwing that out there.
We're going to get there.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, we're going to get there. So hard work, also chalk this one up to the same thing here of not a huge change. This is actually one of the ones that's smaller. So in this category, Gen X was actually the leading one, ages 39 to 54. My
generation stepping up.
Well, but okay, ages 39 to 54, which Lance doesn't fall in age-wise. Maybe he identifies more with them.
In my heart.
About 93 or 94% said that hard work was very important. In comparison, about 82 to 83% of Gen Z and millennials. Again, I would say the drop here is attributed to they've grown up in a world where overall productivity has gone up while wages have remained stagnant. So there's this kind of thing that irks in the back of their mind of, well, if I don't work hard, I definitely won't get anywhere. But working hard also doesn't seem to really greatly benefit me either. In other words, I can work my butt off and I still may not get to where my parents were. So that value of hard work is being diminished in that it's like, well, okay, is it really worth working hard if my hard work's not going to pay off the same way that it did for others?
10 years ago when my oldest daughter was in college, she looked at me and said, Dad, I don't feel this way, but I'm just telling you on campus, kids my age are like, I just want a job for 40 hours a week because I have other things I want to do in life besides work.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to allow you then it's kind of a lead in for community involvement.
Oh.
Because they have other things that are important to them.
Correct.
Which is also another reason why they don't want to have children, because they have global issues or local issues that they want to become involved in. But then that's also to support my definition of being selfish. They want to take care of what they want to do. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So while you're going to throw it into my face that they're very involved with the community, I'm getting out in front of that and taking your thunder away from you because they see the world as a place that they want to make better so that their life will be better and that everybody's life will be better. But in order to do that, they need more free time. So they just want to work the 40-hour a week and not then be tied to 60, 70 hours a week as a generation. That's why they, still value hard work, but they're very involved in the community. And it's also why they're selfish because they want their needs met, and their needs come from helping others, helping the community, and everything else. So they're still working hard, but they're not working hard at a paying job.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely part of it's that the hard work thing too is it's all relative to what do we mean when we say hard work? Hard work for hard work's sake or hard work related to your job, right? Or the way that I view it is just, doing everything that you do to the top level that you're capable of doing it, or putting in your best effort to do stuff. So there's a lot of different ways it could be viewed.
But you got to do that more than 10 hours. God, I did my best work for 10 hours this week.
Yeah.
I'm a hard worker. What?
Well, if society here, but see, this is where the generations diverge too, because there's this philosophical thing that I think you would get into with a lot of millennials and Gen Z is that it's kind of the patriotism argument. Hard work for hard work's sake is bogus. We view it as bogus. In other words, this idea that, well, look how hard I worked, so didn't I do a good job versus the hard work I did equaled XYZ. And I think that, again, that is a generational thing. I think that the government worked hard for a long time, particularly post-depression, to sell people that, you put in hard work for hard work's sake because hard work's something to be proud of. And it is for some people. I think you have generations emerging now that say hard work's important if it equals something, and again, that doesn't necessarily mean something for me, but equals something. In other words, I'm not just going to work my butt off just to work my butt off.
Because it's a good feeling when you work hard.
Well, for some people, I guess,
But then some of those people want the same things I have.
But
they didn't work as hard.
But there are, right. But there are lots of countries in the world where, a 25 or 30 hour work week is the norm. Americans are the ones in the world that are obsessed with.
And here's where I'm patriotic. That's why America's at the top of the heap.
Top of the heap in what, though? Because those countries have a higher level of happiness and a higher level of longevity.
And when they all get attacked, who do they turn to for support?
Right.
And help. And
so
aid.
It's all a matter of how you define it.
When they have tsunamis and when they have cyclones and earthquakes, who do they all turn to help them out? Because they haven't worked hard enough to prepare for those disasters and wars and things like we have.
Or maybe they've just hacked the system and have it figured out. We don't have to pay for any of that stuff. We don't have to work as hard, and we have a better life and live longer.
But they wouldn't if we didn't come to their rescue every time they had a natural disaster.
But we come to their rescue. So
Maybe we shouldn't then, huh?
Well, you and your buddy Trump. You're just getting on that Trump train.
I thought about that when I said that.
I know you were.
I mean, if you're going to use that analogy that they've got it figured out, then okay then.
I know. Then you put me on the Bernie train.
But we shouldn't because of community involvement. There. And notice where I am with the Gen Xers. See, Gen Xers are the best group of community involvement. Boom! Gen X again. From a boy that was born in 1961 and baby boomers stopped at 1960.
I know. You're going to keep making the argument. That's okay. Gen X, ages 39 to 54.
It's the theme of the show.
Ages 39 to 54 came in at about 69%, 68%. On saying that community involvement was very important. By contrast, boomers were at the bottom in this category, coming in at about 58%, so 10 percentage points less, with millennials and Gen Z bringing in the middle of the pack at about 61, 62%. So not surprising. We know that there's a lot of civic-minded stuff going on, and that speaks to what Lance already described. And then this last one ties in kind of as you'd expect. I hinted at this before. I think to me, Lance, this is the good sign, okay? We don't have it all figured out because I think that there's value that has been lost by the subtraction of patriotism and religion. Albeit, I think there's also a lot of bad things that have come as a result of patriotism and religion.
Yes.
Which in turn, and this is again where I think the hope is, this tolerance of others category, okay? Gen Z and millennials leading the pack. Caleb is so proud.
Barely.
He's
Well,
hey, still leading. We'll take the win.
82 to 79.
A win by one is still a win.
Yeah, that's right. A win by one still gets you the Super Bowl, Lance. So.
See, that's not the way I would read that. I would read that as it's very similar in the country.
It is very similar.
But notice it's tolerance.
Yes.
Tolerated,
which I don't love. I would have liked the question to be different.
Right, because tolerance is I can tolerate you.
Right.
I don't have to like you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around you. I don't want to go to school with you. I don't want to live with you.
Depends on how people define it.
I'm just tolerant of you, meaning I'm not going to do anything to harm you, but I don't necessarily want to
if they had changed
be a part of your life.
To acceptance or welcoming of others, I would have loved to see then what I imagine would be a much wider
I agree with that.
Wider
scale. And that's why I point that out.
Right.
I think the reason why it's so close is the word tolerant.
I also think it's important to note that there's a difference between saying that you believe tolerance of others is very important and actually carrying it out, which this is not at all, of course, measuring. So it's easy to say that Gen X, boomers, and the silent generation, right, all have a 79% belief that tolerance of others is very important. Well, that's great. That doesn't mean that they're very tolerant of others. Just like it's the same thing for millennials and Gen Z. Just because they say 84, 85% of them say that it's very important doesn't mean they're living it. So that's something else too that I think you have to look at. I would have loved to change it to acceptance because I do believe that margin would have been wider.
I agree with that.
Totally. So, but again, it's that self-identifying thing. Most people, if you say, are you tolerant of others? Most people probably aren't going, I mean, the data tells us most people are not going to sit there and say, oh no, I hate other people. You know, I am intolerant of everyone. They probably wouldn't say that.
Well, if you're
even
a boomer,
if they are.
If you're a boomer and you're religious, you better be tolerant of others because your religion teaches it.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean
it should teach it. I was going to say.
Which is my problem. Which is my problem with religion.
Generous of you, Lance.
Right. Which is my problem with religion. Which again, bam. That's why I'm Generation X.
I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you. All right. On that note, Lance, people want to invite their friends to listen.
They do.
There's a lot of ways
I'm interesting
they can
and fun, and you are too.
Okay.
You really
what about
are.
Caleb?
What about me?
Caleb, no, he's not. He's here for the comedic effect.
Man, that was a fast answer. No.
He's here for the comedic.
The first shot I could take. This one might be a little harder.
I'm throwing him across the bow. Yeah.
Okay. It probably has something to do with you not being invited back to the True Sports Show.
Oh, it most definitely is. It's just ingrained now. I mean, I'd have to be on 2 or 3 episodes in a row.
I'm sorry that Dick LeBeau ranks higher on my list than Lance Jackson when it comes to sports.
You know me a lot better than Dick LeBeau. You know me much better than Dick LeBeau.
So where can people tune in, Lance?
Well, they can go to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, or anywhere else fine podcasts are found.
Okay, whatever.
Or podcasts.
Hey,
however you want to say it.
He's showing that he's a boomer. He's showing the boomer.
However you want to say it. You can either say podcast or padcost.
Having one of those old people moments.
Oh, it's the same thing.
If you want to get access to the article, thestateofus.org, thestateofus.org. That way you can follow along and see what we're looking at. For The State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
And I'm Caleb Spinner.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change.